Welcome, everybody. It's so lovely to be here tonight, and we are in for a treat with this mother and daughter dynamos, the two of them, and I'm going to hand over straight to you, Sharon and Lauren. Welcome.
Thank you.
This is really exciting. We've waited a long time.
Thank you so much, Lynn, and thank you all of you who requested this evening. I've had lots and lots of requests for us to do it, so here you are. We already have a question in the chat, and it is, do we need to write down the ingredients or will you email them? We have the most beautiful recipes that Ilana in the office has formatted, so they will be emailed to everybody who has registered. So don't worry about writing anything down. You'll get it all. Just sit back and enjoy. So talking about recipes, I'm going to start with before we chat, we'll start the recipes. And what I'm going to demonstrate is my crunchy salad. This is a salad that I developed when we were living in Nashville. I had something similar at somebody's house, and it was wonderful, and I kind of invented it myself. It became such that everybody in Nashville that we ever went to asked me to make it. We used to go to Friends every year for fast breaking. They had about 60 people, and if I did not bring the crunchy salad, there was a revolution. So here we go. No time wasted. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the dressing. And what we have in the dressing, and this is a huge salad. You can always halve it or do 3/4 if you want. I'm doing the full recipe. So the dressing starts off with 2 cups of oil.
And just when we talk about a huge salad, how much lettuce?
About 4 Cos lettuces and some Chinese cabbage, a lot.
It's a huge salad.
It's a huge salad. So we have 2 cups of oil. I use canola oil. And then we have 1 cup of vinegar, what's it called? Apple cider vinegar. And 1 cup of sugar. And I hope it all fits into this jar, because it's going to have to fit into the jar. There we go. Okay. We have 4 to 5 tablespoons of soy sauce in. We have 2 teaspoons of sesame oil, and we have unmeasured quantities of salt and pepper. There you go. And put the lid on.
It already smells divine.
And shake it up.
Want me to shake while you move on?
Yeah, you shake and I'll move. Okay, so now I have all the greens chopped up for this salad already, but because the way you chop them is so important, I'm just going to demonstrate for you how I do it. The thing about the salad is that the greens need to be chopped quite finely. So this is a baby Cos lettuce, and what I do is I first make several cuts down the length of it like that. And then I go from the end and I slice it that way. Okay, so what you land up with is quite small pieces. Okay, so that's how you do the Cos. Chinese cabbage, the same way. Cut down the length. You don't have to do the Chinese cabbage. If you want to do all Cos, you can. I find that the Chinese cabbage adds a little bit of extra crunch, and since this is called crunchy salad, and so again there you see quite small pieces. Let's just get rid of that. Then there is broccoli, and it's really important how you slice the broccoli. So all you want is the green parts, the little floury parts or whatever it is. So you take the head of broccoli like that and you just slice down. So you can see that pieces of broccoli are coming off like that. Okay, so that's how you do the broccoli. And then Where is it?
What if we lost?
I've lost the spring onion.
Oh, wow.
Okay, folks. I'm sorry I lost it.
We got an onion on the run.
It's a good thing I'm not on TV. Jeffrey found the spring onion. Okay, what we do with the spring onion is instead of using a knife, I just use scissors and easy peasy. Okay, that's how you do, and you use the whole thing, including the white end. So there we have all of that. Now, this morning, I did it for you. So this is all washed, chopped, and then washed. And one of the reasons I didn't want to be doing this for you live is that I'm a bit obsessive compulsive about washing, and I wash it 3 times afterwards. So you didn't need to watch me do that. So this is all the lettuce. We have pecans, toasted pecans.
How many was that?
1.5 cups. 1.5 cups of toasted pecans.
Did you toast them yourself?
I toasted them myself and I chopped them. The spring onions are already in there, and the broccoli. Where's the? Oh, it's in the fridge. Here we go.
She's so prepared, but there we go.
Okay. Okay. The problem is I'm over prepared. I'm so glad you're all friends. Here are the spring onions, beautifully chopped. Here is the broccoli, beautifully chopped. The pecans are in there. Now, it is such an enormous salad. I have these huge bags, 2.5-gallon bags that I buy in the States, and not being able to travel is a bit of a problem. And I might have to order them on Amazon. In goes all the dressing. All right. And this is the best part. So zip it closed, and this is how you toss the salad. Round and round and round and round. Now, I usually put the noodles in with it, but because the noodles have gluten, and Lauren loves the salad more than anything else that I cook, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some salad off for her into the green bowl. Okay.
Okay, so we have 2 bowls. We have a little bowl for me, just a small one.
But Sharon, when you're making this recipe, you could actually prep it all in stages, and you could cut up all the greens and put them aside and make the dressing and just put it together when you need it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, totally.
I'm very hungry this evening, so there's my.
Okay, so here I have chow mein noodles, and pop those in. I leave some for the top. You can also leave, I put all the nuts in, but you can leave some of the nuts on top for doing on top. Sorry, if this bag is making a horrible noise, I apologize, but what we will do for our stomachs. And into the salad bowl it goes. There we go.
And ta-da!
That was beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Okay, what we have, where did I put those bowls for salad?
I don't.
And here we can just sprinkle some more nuts on top. And
Now we get to have the best part.
and we get to invite Steve, and those of you who remember him from last time, his tasting name is Jeffrey. In here, get out some forks, and he is going to be our taste tester.
So that was really quick and easy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How long does it normally take to cook or
Oh.
prepare?
Once you've got all this stuff, 10 minutes. The chopping is and the washing it is takes the longest. Okay,
Right.
here you go.
Mm, 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 mm. This is fantastic. I don't normally like salads. I'm a meat and potatoes man, but oh, this crunchy salad is so good. This is my breakfast tomorrow morning.
Yes, I forgot to tell you all that. He eats it, when we have it in the evening, he eats it for breakfast.
Well, and that's what I do as well. That's why I took so much.
Okay. So, Steve, could you take this away?
Okay. Here, I'll get the thing and we'll get into the.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody. So that was just a little bit of a prequel to our evening. We're actually going to spend the rest of the evening interviewing each other. So,
right. We will be, Lauren will be baking one thing, but most of it is, sorry, we're just wiping up the surface here. Okay. All right.
and we're ready.
Okay.
So,
Hi.
hi. That salad was fabulous. So what we're going to do is really just get to know each other now. So the way we're going to do that is by interviewing each other, right? So I'm going to find out a little bit about you.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Well, I was born in Cape Town, South Africa. My grandparents all came from Lithuania, as most of the South African Jews did. My father was born, well, my father's parents were not Lithuanian, Poland at that time. So my dad came out when he was 3. That was in 1927. Well, they got out well before the war began. My mother was born in Cape Town, and we grew up in a lovely Jewish community there. It was about 25,000 people. The majority of the Jewish community in Cape Town was Orthodox, in that we belonged to an Orthodox shul, although the majority were not observant Orthodox in terms of being frum. And there were also later, there were 2 Reform temples as well. There was a Jewish day school in Cape Town called Herzliya, but I did not go to that. It was on the other side of town. I went to an all-girls public school. Before we talk about that, I just wanted to show you a picture. The middle one, the middle picture there is me on my mum's shoulder, and the side pictures are my parents holding Lawrence Michaela in exactly the same way. I absolutely love that picture. And then this is me a little older on my little horsey. Up there, there we go, our picture froze a bit there. And then this was me at my school. I was in year 6 there. I'm sitting right in the front, in the middle, in front of the teacher. That's me.
Teacher's pet, were you?
Yeah, teacher's pet. My school was called Rustenburg. So because we didn't go to a Jewish day school, I have 2 sisters. I'm the oldest one. 2 younger sisters. We did not go to the Jewish day school, so we went to Ryder at the shul that we belonged to. And our dad was adamant that these girls would have a Hebrew education. So after our bat mitzvahs, when there were no more Cheder classes to go to, he arranged for a series of private teachers to come and teach us at home. These teachers ranged from awful to an ultra good looking young Israeli guy called Mr. Giloni, who my sisters and I would absolutely just drool when he arrived.
You never told me about him.
Anyway, and so that we did up to year 11. We had a Hebrew education. I did have a bat mitzvah. We had the bat mitzvah. There's a great synagogue in Cape Town and they used to have a lovely bat mitzvah ceremony. There were 15 girls in my group, and look how we were dressed. We all had to wear white with little flowers around our heads. The bat mitzvah ceremony they had was always on second day Shavuot, and we stood up and we recited a prayer. And then this was Chief Rabbi Israel Abrams, who was a legend, an absolute legend in the South African Jewish community. And he gave a speech, and that was the bat mitzvah. We had a party afterwards. I'm going to jump forward a little bit to Lauren, because Lauren had a very different bat mitzvah.
By the way, she hasn't shown me any of the photos that we're looking at tonight, so this is all a surprise for me.
That was Lauren's bat mitzvah. That was in the conservative congregation in Nashville, where we were living. You will see that she is wearing a yarmulke, she's wearing a tallis, and she is reading from the Torah. Obviously, this was not taken on Shabbat. Lauren will tell you later about her bat mitzvah, but as many similarities as the two of us have, and we have many, many, our bat mitzvahs were entirely different. Anyway, so I finished high school.
So what next? What did you do after high school?
Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school until I was in year 12. It was sort of expected in that culture in South Africa that most of the young women would go to university, they would become teachers, which is wonderful, and then at about the age of 21 you were expected to be married. Well, my dad was a doctor, he was a GP, and he was a really busy GP. He used to make house calls in the middle of the night. He would sometimes be out 2-3 times in the night. He had a really tough life in his career, as busy as he was. And anytime I ever mentioned medicine, he no, oops, the phone. Hang on a second, guys.
We're back. We are disconnected here on this phone. That's okay. Let me just turn this on and see if I can get this going again.
Okay, we're back.
We're good. Dad, you're gonna have to hold this.
Yeah, come and hold it.
Okay. Oh, good.
Please. We've lost the picture.
Okay, oh, sorry. Oh, shoot. Where's Zoom? Okay. And we're back. We're good. You're gonna have to just hold this steady.
Just hold it.
Just hold it
okay.
the whole time.
Sorry about that, folks. Lynn, can you hear us? Just give us a thumbs up. Yes? Okay. So every time I said that I wanted to do medicine, my dad said, no, it's much too hard a life for a woman. It's absolutely terrible. Well, when I was in year 12 in high school, I met a friend of a friend, and her name was, and still is, Louise Berkowitz, and she was doing medicine. And we had this long chat, and we spoke about what I wanted to do. And by the end of the conversation, she had convinced me that what I needed to do was medicine. And when you talk about how one conversation and one person can change somebody's life, that is exactly what happened. That one conversation with Louise Berkowitz changed the path of my life forever. I'm eternally grateful to her. So I applied to medical school. I went to medical school. And as much as my dad did not want me to go to medical school, when I graduated 6 years later, he was crying and boo-hooing in the audience and as happy as he could be. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
So now, since then, you have worked as a doctor for many years. Tell us about your career.
Well, when I finished medical school, I did my housemanship, and then I got married, and I did part-time work because the kids started to arrive. And oh, by the way, maybe since I used the word married,
good looking.
There. That was me, the bride. That was December 1974. And there's the handsome groom. There. Okay. Great. Okay, so we got married in the Great Synagogue in Cape Town, which was where my parents had gotten married, where Steve's dad had been the president of that shul. I think his parents got married there, and everybody in Cape Town just about got married at the Great Synagogue. The kids came along. I had a boy and a girl. Another similarity, yes. Lauren has a boy and a girl. And so I worked part-time doing outpatient clinics and eventually did some outpatient ultrasound work, which has a bearing on what I chose to do later. So
fantastic. So what was the hardest part about your career?
At that point, there was nothing hard. At that point, it was really, really easy. The hard part of my career came later. In 1983, we moved to Nashville, Tennessee, which was a surprise to us as it was to everybody. I mean, who in the world would move to Nashville, Tennessee? If you're not a country music singer, why would you be there? Well, it's interesting because Nashville is actually a city that has many, many universities, and there's a lot there besides country music. You can live your whole life in Nashville, Tennessee and not have anything to do with country music. So we moved there, and we went in 1982 for Steve to interview. He was a software engineer at Vanderbilt University. This was the beginning or the middle of July, the height of summer in the United States, and it is hot there, hot, 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 and humid. So he goes off to have his interviews, and they very nicely said to me, you just wander around the university campus and we'll meet you for lunch. Well, folks, it was about 40 or 42 degrees with close to 100% humidity. There was no way that this princess was going to be sweating outside.
Yet another thing in common.
So luckily, the hospital is on the main campus of the university. So I went into the hospital. As I said, I'd been doing ultrasound in Cape Town. And I went to the radiology department and I said, I'm Dr. Stein, and I'm from Cape Town, and I do ultrasound. Is there anybody in ultrasound that I could speak to? And they said, oh yes, Dr. Fleischer, he would love to speak to you. Well, I about died because Dr. Fleischer was one of the gods of ultrasound. He had written the textbook that I used, and I thought, oh my goodness gracious, Art Fleischer is a lovely Jewish boy. He was absolutely fantastic. He was a schmoozer. We sat in his office and chatted, and then he said to me, we've got lots of South African radiologists here in the department. Do you know Max Schaff? I said, of course. Well, I don't know him, but I read his radiology reports all the time. Oh, well, I must introduce you to Max. So next thing, we're off to Max. And turns out that Steve taught Max's nephew at University of Cape Town, and Max told me that I have to be a radiologist. There was no question about this. He took me under his wing, and basically, to cut a very long story short, I landed up when we moved to Nashville, specializing in radiology. I then specialized in pediatric radiology, and that is where the answer to your question about what is the hardest thing about your job. Sick children, it's really, really, really hard. The children who have, the usual, the broken arms or the fractured fingers or whatever, that's fine. They're going to get better. But the really, really sick children, that was very tough. And also, when one of us goes to get an x-ray or something, we might have a friend with us or a partner or a spouse, but with a child, it is the whole family, and you have very anxious parents. They have probably, been waiting several days for this appointment. They've worked themselves up into a state quite understandably. They don't know what you're going to tell them about their child. The child's nervous and maybe crying. The parents are upset, and you have to deal with all of that. And that was the hardest thing, and it was also the most rewarding, and I cannot tell you how much I loved it. So here was another person, Max Schaff, who changed the path of my life and into radiology and then pediatric radiology.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I do remember you working, and that was, yes, busy, on call all the time.
I was. Once when I was a registrar, there was a lot of call, and I thought, oh, when I'm finished, with my training and I get onto the staff, it's going to be a lot easier. No, in fact, it was a lot worse, because then you all have all the responsibility. And I did a lot of call. I used to work weekends where I was at the hospital all weekend. I would get called in the middle of the night to do procedures. Once teleradiology came online and we could view some of the studies from home, it became a little easier, but still being woken up in the middle of the night. People think that radiologists, all they do is they sit in a dark room and read x-rays. Nothing could be further from the truth. I had so much patient contact. It was fantastic. And because I'm a people person, that it was exactly what I needed. The other hard thing, of course, was raising 2 children and working as hard as that. And I couldn't have done it without Steve. Remember, we had no family in Nashville. We left all our family in Cape Town. My sisters both moved here to Sydney. I couldn't call on Granny to come and help because Granny was in Cape Town. And so, first of all, Steve, whose hours were more flexible than mine, did a lot of the child rearing. And secondly, your friends become your family. I'll never forget the time Lauren was sick and I had to go to work, and a friend of mine who has a daughter the same age as Lauren said, don't worry, my kid's got the same thing, drop her at my place, the 2 of them can be sick together. And we are close friends, she and I, to that day. It was that kind of relationship that we developed.
Oh yeah, I remember. And then somehow you still had time to cook and entertain and have people over all the time. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. Yeah,
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
Now we'll turn back to why we're all here. So your Jewish life growing up. So what was that like?
Well, as I say, we went to Ryder. We had, I belonged to Habonim. That was the most common. There was also Bnei Akiva, but I belonged to Habonim. I went to one Habonim camp. It was in a town about 70, 80 miles from Cape Town. It was on the coast. We had to sleep in tents. We had to sleep on the ground. That was the first and last time I ever went camping.
I got that gene from you.
But yeah, and it was interesting. The school that I went to, it was a public school. So in my class, it was an all-girls school. There were 30 students. There were 5 Jewish girls. And we tended to stick together, although we were friends with everyone else. We stuck together, and believe it or not, I'm still very close friends with all those girls today. Some of them are still in Cape Town. One is in New Zealand. And yeah, we're still very, very close friends.
And how did you stay active in the Jewish community in Nashville?
That I did as much as I could within the constraints of my work. I didn't have the time to do the sort of stuff that I do for the shul now. There was one thing that I did do, because Nashville is a small Jewish community, everybody has to pull together. And one of the things that we needed, of course, was a Chevra Kedusha. And that was something that I felt I could do. Because of my medical training, it didn't freak me out. Whereas some of my friends just felt that they couldn't do it. So a lot of our friends who were nurses and doctors did that. And that was something I could do because we would do the Tahara early in the morning before work. And that was something that what I loved about that mitzvah was that it's something that you can't get thanks for. You can never be thanked for that. The families of the deceased did not know who did it.
I didn't know that you were part of the Chevra until a few years ago. So it was a big secret, I suppose.
Yeah, because it's just something that is very private, and it was very, very satisfying. So the other thing that I did in terms of the Jewish community was at Vanderbilt University. There were not a lot of Jewish students, and there were not a lot of Jewish medical students, and there were not a lot of Jewish registrars, but there were some. And I felt that we wanted to make some kind of Jewish life for them. So what we would do is once a month, we would have a Shabbat dinner for them at our place. We had, you know, what we call potluck. Everybody brought a dish. We did a dairy and vegetarian each, and they loved it. We would get 30 students at our place on a Friday
Now,
night.
hang on. So I was like 15, 16 at the time, and she would try to set me up with her Jewish medical students. I think they're in their 20s and 30s.
Well, you know, I mean, a nice Jewish doctor. What more could you wish for? So I absolutely love doing that, and we did that for years and years. And again, I'm still in touch with many of those. Yeah,
and now the Great. Now you're here at the Great,
and
spending all of your retirement supporting.
So we've got to watch the
Yeah,
time.
we do. So just tell. Okay, so finally, tell us about your favorite hobby.
Cooking.
Yes.
My favorite hobby is cooking. I am not athletic. I do not do sports. I never did sports. When I was in high school, the Jewish girls in my class, we would find the tennis court that was furthest from where the gym teacher was, and we would pretend that we were doing tennis, and we would be schmoozing down on the last tennis court. So definitely not athletic. I do force myself to go to the gym now, and it truly is forcing.
Well, you do a good job. I think that's good. Well, I think that brings us to the end of your interview.
Mm-hmm.
We will do another little hiatus where I'm going to cook for you now. So
Okay.
get ourselves set up here. All right. So hello, everybody. What I'm going to cook for you today is called gluten-free brownies. Now, why am I cooking gluten-free brownies? Here we go. We'll show you here. You'll get the recipe afterwards. So I am actually gluten-free. So people ask me if I am celiac, and I'm actually not celiac, but I do have it because of an autoimmune disorder where I eat gluten and it does not agree with me. So here's a little trick for you. So if you guys are getting someone coming over who is gluten-free, if you're baking, these days all of the flour that you can get, the gluten-free, it works just about the same as every other one. So this brownie recipe is not traditionally gluten-free. We actually just replaced the flour with gluten-free flour. So there you go. Well, we'll get started. So this is a very, very easy recipe to do. So easier if you have one of these mixers. So what we'll do is we're going to start with some sugar, which is, oh, no, can you give me that? Yeah, that's probably easier if she leaves me with the recipe here so I can use it. So we've got sugar, which is 400 grams. You just pop that right in. You then have 400 grams of cocoa. 100 grams of cocoa. 100 grams of cocoa helps when you read the recipe. It's easier when someone else measures it out for you. And then we're going to put salt. So just a pinch of salt. Okay, now what we're going to actually do is we're going to pre-mix it before we put it in the blender, just a little bit so it's mixed through. And then what we're going to do is add melted butter. So it's now been melted, but then it was also cooled to room temperature. So we're going to pour that in. 250 grams. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is just a little bit of a stir before we put it in the blender or in the mixer. And that is because if you don't do that, you end up with cocoa all over you. I'm sure some people would enjoy that, but I think we can add a little bit of the vanilla now. Okay. We'll just add 2 teaspoons of vanilla, which I make myself. Vodka with vanilla beans, and it just sits there for months and months and gets better and better and better. Okay. All right. Now we are going to pour the eggs in. Oh, this is up. Wait, is it on?
It's not even straight.
Sorry. Wait. All right.
Wait, you first mix it.
All right. All right. So we're just going to add the eggs one at a time. They have been checked, and I'm going to just turn this. That's it. When you're not using your own machine, it is a little bit tricky. So I might
put one in.
I'll pop. There we go. Okay. Yep. And there's 4 eggs here. 3, 4. And I'm sorry if you can't hear me now, but about a minute.
Just one thing I want to, no, we're going to mix it a little longer, but just whenever you use eggs in a recipe, bring them to room temperature. It's something that I've learned. Okay, a little bit longer with the noise.
All right. So the recipe says to wait until it's a little bit lighter in color, and if you looked inside, it is a little bit. Okay. Now what we're going to do is pour the flour in. So this is gluten-free flour, 140 grams of it, and then you just stir it through. Whoops. Oh, okay. Again, covered in chocolate now. All right, you just stir it through by hand, really, really simply. And then you just put it, and then we just put it, once it's mixed through, into the pan. You can see how easy it is. So anyone can make these brownies. So I'll go ahead and put them in. Okay. And you bake at 180 for 35 minutes. I would like to say that this is my very first online cooking demonstration. So I think I've learned from the best, but sure there's room for improvement here. So anyway, we'll go ahead and pop this in the oven. And here is one that we prepared earlier. So Jeffrey can't move because Jeffrey's actually holding the recording device at the
Sharon
moment.
should hold the device. Come hold the device so I can eat.
Now, a thing to remember when you make brownies, before you cut them, after you bake them and cool them, refrigerate them for a few hours. They cut so much easier. Okay, I'm going to come around and hold the camera while Jeffrey here gets to have his chocolate fix.
So Jeffrey, do you like the edge or the middle?
Edge, of course, the edge.
Oh, well, at least
I just
somebody
want
does.
to let you know that the last 2 days have been sheer hell while this has been sitting in the fridge, and I have not been allowed by the management here to eat these delicious brownies, but at last the moment has arrived. Even better than the salad.
No way, chocolate's better than salad.
Chocolate is infinitely better than salad. But fortunately, you've got this lot for me to eat, plus the ones that are now sitting in the oven. So I should have a chocolate fix, an adequate chocolate fix.
Thanks, Dad. All right. Okay, and we're back. Would you like to change positions here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So Lauren, tell us what you remember about your childhood.
Well, I suppose you all heard a little bit. You heard a little bit about, I suppose, my childhood there. But I grew up in South Africa. Was born there, and we left when I was 3. So I don't really have many memories of that time. But apparently, this is what I looked like. So there you go. So yeah, we moved, as I said, when I was 3. We moved to Nashville. Look, it was a really, really lovely upbringing. Went to a really nice school. It was a private school. Even though it wasn't a Jewish school, about 30% of the kids there were Jewish. So it was, yeah, it was great. We went, oh, this is cute.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. We have to go back to South Africa. This is Lauren with Olga, our nanny. And Olga used to walk around with Lauren strapped to her back, and she would talk to Lauren non-stop. Olga had 5 sons. Lauren was like her daughter. she adored that child. It was absolutely the most wonderful relationship. And then this is just another one of Lauren, a little older, but so cute.
So yeah, so Nashville was really lovely. You know, and we as we said, we belonged to a conservative synagogue there, and we were quite active. We went most weekends, most Shabbat. I went to Sunday school every week from when I was 3 all the way to when I was about 16, 17.
Not only Sunday school, you have Tuesday
And I was going to say, and yeah, getting there. I'll get there. From about, I think it was year 2 or 3 after school, we went on a Tuesday and a Thursday. So we were there 3 days a week doing Hebrew school. So very, very strong Jewish education there. So, you know, from there we ended up, I suppose, going to introduced to being Jewish summer camp and all that. So being Jewish was a really integral part of my life there.
And how about your leading the children's services, your volunteer work in the Jewish congregation?
Yeah. So
when did that start?
So I was about 11 years old when I was asked if I could help out with the Shabbat morning service, because there was always a children's service, and so they always needed a little bit of help. So from about 11 or 12, I started joining that, and not long after, I actually started leading it. So that was actually my first job. I started actually getting paid at that age to work. And not long after that, they asked me if I could come in and teach at Sunday school as well, first as an aide and then as a teacher. So very, very involved at our synagogue from a very young age. So yeah. And then at about, I think it was about 11 or 12.
It's just it's special care.
What's that?
So I was phoning in.
It's okay. Oh, that's ours. You have to hang up, Janet. Just hit, no, there we go. Okay, we back? Sorry, we were just getting a phone call on that phone. So yeah, as I said, we went to Jewish summer camp after that, and really instilled a real love of Judaism. From then, I became really involved in Jewish youth groups. So in Nashville, we actually had about 3 or 4, depending on what time, synagogues as I was growing up. And so I was in the youth group of first our synagogue, but then also there was another youth group that was where it was across all of the different synagogues to general. And I started taking on leadership positions in those, ended up becoming president of the youth group. One of them, we did a lot of travel, met a lot of kids from all over the United States. And yeah, it was just a really, really good time.
And when did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh, that's a very good question. I thought that I wanted to be a dentist for many, many years. I just decided that I want to be a dentist, and I even did an internship where I went to a dentist office and an orthodontist office and an endodontist office who knew that they existed. And ended up thinking that was what I wanted to do until one day, so similar story to my mum. I was on a plane and sitting next to a lovely gentleman, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I want to be a dentist." I think I was probably 16 at the time. And he said, "Why would you want to do that?" He says, "You just have to talk at people all day. Nobody gets to talk back." I said, "Oh." So he started talking about what he did, and it ended up being marketing. And so I ended up deciding that actually it was business that I wanted to go into. So when I got to university, I decided I was going to do a business degree. I thought I wanted to do marketing. Again, flip. After one marketing class, I decided I hated it. And I was doing really, really well in my IT classes and my technology classes. And funnily enough, that's what my father does. So it kind of made sense that I was interested. And yeah, I ended up doing a bachelor's and then a master's all in IT and IT project management, became quite technical. And yeah, and there we go. And one day I actually finished.
She finished, but she was in such a hurry to come to Australia. She had done some studying here in Australia in the middle of her university, and she was in such a hurry to come back. She didn't even want to wait for graduation. So I said to her, "Well, I have to have a graduation picture." So I said, "Go and borrow some graduation gowns." And can you see?
Yeah, but it tilted a bit. The light's bad.
Okay. And so she did, and she graduated, and the next day was on the plane to Australia.
That's right. So I moved to Australia when I was about 21, I think. I studied here for a year when I was 20, moved here a year later. And I haven't looked back. Yeah. So yeah. So I suppose, yeah, it was a big move for me. And I came because my whole family had been here. So as Mum had said, everyone in our family had come from South Africa. So everyone had actually moved to Sydney. So my parents were the only ones who'd moved to America. So we used to come here on holidays just about every year, every other year. And it really felt like home. And it felt more at home than it did in the States. So I just decided to pick up and move. And that was the end of it. It was after I had kids that my parents decided to come here and join me.
So tell us about what you actually do now at work.
What do I actually do now at work? Well, that is a loaded question. So look, I think a lot of people are confused as to what I do. I suppose if I talk about what I do by trade, it's called organizational change management, which is a bit of a mouthful. But basically, it's for when you're working in a large organization and they put some sort of a change into how their people do work. So whether they're putting in new software or changing the way that they do business or things like that, you get a change manager in to help people through the change. Now, what do I actually do? So look, it's kind of multifaceted, but the key thing is working with leaders. I work with CEOs, I work with business leaders. And what I do is I help them to shape the message and I help them to drive the change and I help them to work out when people aren't, because nobody likes change. That's how I've managed to stay in business. So what we do is we actually design programs that help people embrace it better. So I don't know if that makes sense still, but that's what I do.
And your involvement in the Jewish community here?
Since coming to Sydney, well, I joined the Great Synagogue. How long was it? About
8 or 9 years
ago. 8 or 9 years ago. And my kids were little. So Michaela was probably, 2, something like that. Jackson, about 5. And they started coming to the children's service and absolutely loved it. And so, as you heard before, that was kind of my forte, helping out with children's services. And so I started helping out and I started taking the kids on summer camps and all of that. And that was sort of where it started. And then out of nowhere, Caroline Lewis, invited me to join the board. And I thought, why not? I was really enjoying it. Everyone was so lovely. And I thought it's a way I can make a difference.
We have a question here in the chat. You're clearly very close. Have you always been?
Oh, I think that's a good question for anyone who has a daughter.
Yes. Daughters are wonderful up till about the age of 12. There's this time from 13 to 19, you know, that's called the teenage years. And Lauren decided to be a typical teenager.
I was really, really good at it.
She was very good at it. She's good at whatever she does. And she was good at being an obnoxious teenager who really tried to make our lives as difficult as she
succeeded.
could.
But I turned around.
She went to college and she turned around completely. Suddenly, we actually became quite intelligent when she went to college.
Where did she go to college?
She went to George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and we haven't looked back.
Yeah,
we haven't looked back.
So, yeah. Oh, it's funny. So I'm actually, some of the things that you spoke about sports.
Yes.
So you hated sports.
Hated.
Now, I actually, maybe I should say, I don't love sport, but I love working out. I love exercise. And the reason I don't like sport is because a little thing about me is I actually have no hand-eye coordination. I am incredibly klutzy. If you look, I actually was getting ready tonight and I found another bruise. I don't know. I just walk into things and I can't throw and catch. So the sports I do, I used to be swimming and running, just going to the gym. So that's that's a little bit different.
There's another question here. You both love to cook. Where and how did your love of cooking start? It started with my grandparents. They were wonderful cooks. On my father's side, my grandparents were bakers in Poland. On my mum's side, every single Sunday, we would go and sleep over at my grandparents, my sisters and I, every Saturday night. Sunday morning, we would go into the kitchen with Boba and help her, and she made kreplach soup and roast chicken and pierogi and you name it. And we were in the kitchen with her the entire Sunday morning, and then we'd have a big family Sunday lunch. When I was studying for school and university exams, to take a break, to relax, I would go down into the kitchen and I would stir the pots, and my mum never ever shooed us out of the kitchen. She was only too happy that her girls wanted to come into the kitchen, and so that the love of cooking was literally, it's in our genes, and because of parents and grandparents.
And I have the exact same story. She, as I mentioned before, she loved to cook, always go downstairs, and as much as she worked, in between working, she loved cooking, and there was always a bowl to lick or something to taste. I remember fried onions the first time I tried those. and exactly, she never shooed me out. It was always just encouragement. So I learned to cook at a really, really young age, and now I continue to.
Somebody says, you read it.
I understand you have a secret addiction. Are you happy to share what that one is? I think that one's for you.
Okay, I'm gonna have to out with it. My addiction is cookbooks. I cannot walk past a cookbook that I don't love and that I have to have. I have hundreds.
How many hundreds? Because we've counted.
Several. I love them, but you know what? I had a friend in Nashville, a very, very good friend, who used to do ballroom dancing, and she spent a fortune of money on ballroom dancing. And she said, you know what? She said, I'd rather do that than pay the psychiatrist. And cookbooks are my therapy, my love. I love to peruse them, and I do actually cook a lot from them. A cousin of mine once said, oh, I feel guilty if I buy a cookbook and I only make one thing from it. And I said to her, if you have a cookbook and you do only make one thing from it, it's been worth it. Or even if you just get an idea from a cookbook, it's been worth it. So that's how I indulge myself.
Well, so I've got a little unknown hobby myself. So I like to do underwater photography. So I love to go sailing. All of my holidays are beach holidays, anywhere that we can go scuba diving. And for one of my birthdays, my husband bought me an underwater camera and case and lights, and he sent me on a course, and I have been loving it ever since. So a slightly unusual hobby that I have. So I think that's
we're almost at the hour. Maybe we can open up to
Yes,
questions.
so we're almost out of time, but I'm sure there are questions for you.
If anybody wants to unmute yourselves and fire away. We're having trouble seeing
there
that.
we go. Yeah, the video's not coming through. But.
Yeah, we go ahead, Jacqueline.
Yes, Sharon. Did you cook South African dishes? Did you cook South African dishes? Did you like them?
Yes. Lots of South African dishes, curries, bobotie. There's a lovely South African dish called bobotie. Boerewors is the South African sausage. That is delicious. Steve said tomato breedy. Absolutely.
So you carry on. You carry on cooking them here. You still go on doing
this?
Absolutely.
Although I must say that now, the in thing now is ottolenghi and the more Middle Eastern type of dishes with all the wonderful spices and herbs and things that he uses. So I'm kind of more into that now. But sometimes when we just want to go back to old times, we go back to the old South African dishes. There was melktert, which was a milk tart, like a custard tart, which we absolutely loved. I think Roz Fischel has unmuted herself. Roz, do you have a question?
Oh, it's more just to say what an entertaining hour we've had and how fantastic that I managed to convince you to come to the Great Synagogue. What a benefit you've been, all of you. And it was really entertaining. Hello, David and Stephanie. Lovely to see you there. Hope you're well. And thank you so much, Sharon, for all the work you've done.
Oh, you're welcome.
It
is all Roz's thing. It is all Roz Fischel's fault that we're at the rate. She is, because
Thank
she
you,
told
Rob.
us at the time that Rabbi Garber was having the children's services. And so we came because of Jackson and Michaela, the children's services, and then the rest just followed from there.
Yeah.
Shelley, did you have yourself unmuted there?
David Hilton.
Oh, David Hilton wants to say something.
I just wanted to say hi to everybody. Just thought I'd let you know that we're sweltering in 34 degrees in dear old London at the moment.
Lovely to see you, David and
well.
Stephanie.
Lovely to see everybody.
It's lovely. Very nostalgic.
Shelley,
Yeah,
thanks.
again, a great evening. Good to hear what everybody does and everything, and to see everybody from here, there, and everywhere. But one thing I want to ask: does Stephen ever say, "I don't like that"?
Never. Never.
No.
And are we
I
all
tell you,
invited to eat salad for breakfast tomorrow and the brownies?
You are. There was one
Fantastic.
thing that I cooked once that he didn't like. We were newly married and I had bought yellow cling peaches and I poached them. And for some reason, they didn't get soft. They got hard. They were like cannonballs. I was so upset. Here I am, this new bride trying to cook for my husband, and it was a Shabbat dinner, and it was absolutely awful, absolutely awful. I have to tell you, just on the subject of cooking, when we were in Nashville, it took me a while to get used to Americans and what they do and don't eat. And those of you who are from South Africa will remember what a delicacy tongue was. And you really served tongue for very, very special guests. And my mom had the recipe with sweet and sour tongue with ginger biscuits and heaven knows what. Well, we invited my new boss. I had just started working and my boss came for dinner and his wife. And I thought, oh, what can I do? I have to make the most special dish. And I made tongue. Well, if I tell you their faces when I said the word tongue, they pushed this food around on their plates. They ate the vegetables. It was that was the last time I had. This was in the early 1980s. I have never made tongue since then.
Great.
And another American thing. At the time that we left South Africa, tuna lasagna was a great dish. Everybody, when you went for dinner Saturday nights to your friends, and everybody was making tuna lasagna. And we invited some people for dinner that we'd met. We were fairly new there. And I brought out the tuna lasagna, and this one woman looks at it and she says, tuna noodle casserole? That's what I give my kids when they come home from school in the afternoon. Okay. Didn't make that one again either. So, yeah, anyway,
It's been such a lovely hour. I think everybody has loved it. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you for letting us share our lives with you and our families and our kitchens, and we'll see you again soon.